Okay, my friends, welcome to another episode of Christian Podcast. Today we have John Michael Bout 2.0. This is the second time he's been on the show. He's with Into the Light, a documentary that brings into the light the problem of pornography, and we're going to discuss it, right? So welcome, John, to the show. How are you doing?
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited to come back and tell you guys about the next thing that we produced. I'm so excited.
Okay. All right. So let's kick it off. This is a huge topic, right? Can you tell us a little bit of the statistics? Like, why is this? How is this resonating maybe with people in North America or even in the world? What do you know?
Yeah. So the problem of pornography is massive. You know, sometimes we talk about, there's huge things that are going on in the world, but truly pornography is one of the biggest issues that every family, every church is facing. And why do I say that? Because statistically, the average age of exposure to pornography is age 8. Wow. That's crazy. And I am a living testimony to that. I think I shared this last time, but I personally got exposed to pornography when I was age 8 in a Christian home with parents who love the Lord. They just didn't know that you need to talk to your kids at younger and younger ages. So, you know, I always say to people, the problem of sexual brokenness, of sin and all these things, that's not new. But what is new is the level of exposure that is happening, and that we have a multi-billion-dollar industry that's actively pursuing our children and our families. You know, I don't want to make it a bigger deal than it is, but it really is something every family and every church needs to think about. Wow.
So it's happening kind of like two churches too. It's almost like indiscriminate of, kind of like spiritual background or affiliation. So even churches are dealing with this, even homes who are Christian homes. So, I mean, our home, right? We have 3 children and they're in that specific age range. So what you're saying is they probably have seen something on the internet already by this time.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. The average age of exposure is age 8. Even in the church, that means that kids are getting exposed even younger. That means older. You know, I talked to my pastor recently, and he said the number one issue that he counsels in our church is the issue of pornography. And there's another statistic that 75% of pastors say that that's one of the number one issues that they have to address in their church. So I always want to plead with parents. You are the front line. You are the one that God's put in the driver's seat to help shepherd your kids, to protect your kids. And don't think that this isn't coming, into your home. It is. But we want to equip you to address that. That might feel scary. That might seem, like I can't do this. But trust me, you can. Jesus is with you. The Bible has answers for these things, and you can talk to your kids.
Yeah. Wow.
And not just to our kids. How about my friends?
Yeah.
You know, because I've been in some uncomfortable situations when my daughter, who is only 8 years old, her friend is looking at this TikTok, and they think it's funny because they're showing the butt. And I was looking at the videos like, it's like pornography. Like, I was like, give me your phone. And I took the phone from her and I put it in the kitchen, but I never mentioned anything again. I just went to my daughter and I talked to her and I explained her that videos, they're not proper. That's so bad for you. You don't watch that videos, because she's always so careful. You know, like when she's going to change, nobody can see her. Nobody can touch you. So you and she locks the room. So like she's always afraid that somebody's going to see her, even her daddy. You know, that's how I teach her, because I come from a background as a Latina, as a Mexican. I will never say nothing. People touch me, people did things to me, and it's something that you don't, back in the days, like 30, 40 years ago, you don't talk about it. Your parents, my mother, never talk about it. So when I came to her telling her, Mom, your brother abused me, he's always touching me. He's like, no, it's my brother. He will never do that. And I was so sad because she didn't believe me. And now that I'm 40 years old,
Yeah.
Oh, my cousins start telling me that uncle touched
43,
everybody.
sister.
43.
43.
It's like, oh my gosh, he abuses all, and nobody's saying nothing. He was sick.
They were all quiet.
They were all quiet. Crazy. One person touched my whole family.
Wow, I'm so sorry. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's part of the whole thing with anything related to sexuality. I think in the church, in families, there's shame that's involved in it. There's
shame.
guilt there, and there's just like we just don't talk about that. And I think the devil loves to use that as a way to keep it going, as a way to keep people in the dark. I mean, that's why we named our first film, we named our ministry Into the Light Ministries, because we want to help people move from the shame, from the guilt in the darkness into light. That's the biblical idea. So trying to help people like in your situation know that they can stand up and say something. Or if you see your kids doing something, that you must say something to them.
Wow, John Michael. So I have a question in regards to like, are there any rules or regulations around this issue? Why it's so pervasive? Why it's kind of like the number one issue in America? Is there any work maybe being done around trying to create regulations and bring down the levels of like people consuming this, or is it just like a free for all, like just everybody's going for it because there are no rules, or is it even allowed? What do you know about like why is it so pervasive and almost like allowed and kind of like incentivized in that sense?
Well, if you think about it, money is what drives a lot of people. So this is an incredibly lucrative business. That's why so many people are in it. But thankfully, over the last kind of 5 or 6 years, there have been some states that are starting to ban pornography. I think there's only like 2 right now. So some specific porn sites will be blocked in that region or state. But frankly, there's a ton of work that still needs to be done, because most states in the U.S., most places in Canada and Mexico and other places of the world are just wide open. So no restrictions, no age limits, like 3 clicks, 30 seconds, you can access the most destructive, naked sexual images that human history has ever seen. So like even the richest prince, richest king through all of history up till now did not have access to the kind of things that we do now, and our 8-year-olds have access to. So I just say that to illustrate, there's some restriction in some states, but it's almost wide open, and that's why we need to talk about it.
So why pornography destroys you? It's something like I don't deal with. Thanks God, God protect me. I have other kind of devils, other kind of issues, but this is not been my issue. Thanks God. But I just want to know, the
what does it do to your mind?
What happened to these kids? What they do to these kids or to these adults? Or what is like the levels or sickness or whatever they're dealing with?
Yeah, so there's some really good literature and studies on this, but I'll just kind of simplify it for this conversation. It actually works very similar with neuroplasticity to like actual drug substances. So those substances, when you use them repeatedly, create patterns in the brain that create a chemical neurological addiction. And a lot of people are like, oh, pornography, that's nothing like, cocaine or whatever. But there's been studies that show the different neural pathways that get forged because of the dopamine and serotonin that get released with usage of it, that it works very similar actually to other types of drugs. So I've sometimes told people, like, it's not a perfect one-to-one correlation, but it's kind of like leaving crack cocaine in your kids' pockets or giving it to them with Pooh Bear on the front. And just trusting that they're not going to do anything with it, and then being surprised when it ruins or messes up their life. And I also just say to people, like, think about the wreckage this is having on their future marriages, on their future kids. Like this creates generational problems when you don't talk about it. And so, it does affect the body. It's incredibly addicting. And so that's why we have to address it before there's a problem as much as possible. You can get free. I'm a testament to that. By the power of the gospel, with Jesus' help, you can get free. But the best thing that we could be doing is kind of going back higher up the stream and saying, let's start addressing this as a church, as a family, way sooner, by when they're 8 years old or even younger. Start laying really simple foundations, like, hey, hey, Nathan, there's bad pictures online that of naked people, and if you ever see something like that online, you can always come talk to mommy or daddy, and we're not going to be mad at you. We're not going to get angry at you. And we actually want you to tell us so that we can help you. And, some people like to look at those things, but it's actually really bad for you. And we want to help protect you. Repeating little foundations like that, but also emphasizing God's good design for family, for sexuality, for our bodies is good. It's a wonderful thing. It's not something to be embarrassed about, but it's designed for a space. Mm-hmm. He made sex to be used with a man and a woman in the covenant of marriage. And when it goes outside of that design, then there's all sorts of brokenness and pain that happens. So just teaching these really fundamentals to your kids is what's so important. And if people want to learn more about how to do that, we produced a series called Parenting and Pornography: Roadmaps to Raising Children of Integrity, which is kind of a masterclass video series that just walks through all the kind of things I was just sharing with you guys.
Wow.
You can talk about it with your kids.
And where we can look for it?
That will be available on our website, intothelightministries.ca. So intothelightministries.ca. And we're making it free for people because we really believe that this is so important to be proactive in talking about it to your kids.
Wow.
That's amazing.
So important. And it's, when you're talking about your experience, Millie, and John Michael too, and I mean, we're all sinners, right? And saved by grace and saved by Jesus. But to understand that, you were saying, Satan has been using these tools at his disposal. Mm-hmm. But even as you tell your story, Millie, 30 years ago, this was already happening. But to know that now he's almost taking it to higher levels, right? This is available, accessible on the internet, on the 3 clicks and you're there. So it's massive, so it's not that the sin or the way Satan is working is new, but what is new, I think, is that the levels are alarming, right? Because I mean that just kind of tells you where our society is at in 2024, going into 2025, and almost fully into the new century. And as a society, we're starting off with this massive issue, which what I'm getting from you is this is a societal addiction, right? Our society is addicted to sex. And I mean, I love that you said when talking to our kids, because this is what whenever I talk with our kids, I always start with sex is good. Sex was created by God and he made it good. When he created it, he said that it was good. Now let's look at maybe some ways in which we had made it bad, right? But I think that's kind of all I know, right? But in this sense, I mean, I feel like you guys have been in it more and you're kind of experts. So what are maybe some of those first steps that you recommend as maybe we watch this video, okay, we talk to our kids, we say sex is good, that God has a covenant within marriage. And then what's the next step? Should we watch over our kids when they're on their phones? Should we I don't know, what do you recommend? How did you even in your own walk what was helpful for you to get out of that and overcome the addiction, right?
Yeah. I mean, so there's a few different things we can kind of go into, whichever ones you want to talk about, but right away off the start, whether you're struggling and you want to cut off access, to break free from that addiction, and that was part of my story, or for parents listening, I think one of the very first steps you can take is to protect the devices in your house. So essentially it takes a totally open, pathway to pornography, to all the dangerous things on the internet, even predators and things like that. And it kind of closes that down, it protects it, and then gives you a little bit of a safe home, a safe space to start teaching your children and investing in them. Because the goal, as parents, can't just be to protect our kids. If our goal is only to protect our kids, then, we've got 18 years, maybe, and then, they're all out, they're outside the house. And then we don't have any control over them anymore. The goal as Christian parents should be to raise men and women of integrity who love the Lord and who of their own volition want to say no to pornography. So, that takes time to build foundation. The Lord needs to work in their hearts. But I think it's really important for parents to understand that kind of bigger goal is raising men and women of integrity who will say no, who when they leave the house, you don't even really have to be worried about it. So with that goal in mind, I always tell parents, now start with cutting off access so you can have some time to kind of build those foundations. And I'm not sure if I mentioned this to y'all before we did the interview, but we're producing a series called Tech Safe. And this is a very, very practical series, basically aimed at, okay, parents, you need to protect your devices. How do you do it? How do you go through smart TVs, gaming consoles, smart homes, phones, computers, all of those different types of technology? Basically, in our series, it's a tutorial set that walks through, okay, you got those types of devices. Here's how information flows into your home. Here's the different danger points, the ways pornography could come in, predators. And then we're going to give you some tools to filter, monitor, or block all of those different avenues so that your home's safe and you can protect your kids and start talking to them about the gospel, about God's good design.
Wow. We need that in every elementary school.
I mean, that would be the
amazing.
hope.
Can you imagine?
Okay, so that's really good. Thank you so much. I have one personal story, just for the sake of kind of like making people relate, right, to this, and kind of like maybe also trying to break down some of the barriers and maybe the shame as people, tune into this, massive topic. Because after the story, I want to tap into church leadership, right? Because you're saying this is happening in churches. And then also maybe even like parents who are in it, maybe they're themselves already addicted, right? So, man, that would be super chaotic. But before I do that, I just want to kind of like tell my own story and hopefully, break down some of those shame and barriers and move from there, right? So when I was little, can't remember exactly, how old, probably 10, 11, something like that. In Mexico, I remember we lived in a complex of apartments, right? So many people lived in this complex. And I had friends and we played outside. This is in the 80s, right? So it's like typical kids playing outside. And I remember just somewhat of an adult invited us into this house where one of the kids lived, right? And then they sat us on a couch, and then they started showing us like some pornographic material, right? And it was it's kind of like made like a movie, but it has pornographic stuff, right? And that was my first and last encounter, thank God, that I ever had with pornography at that level. But all that to say, when I try to put myself back in the shoes of myself as a little kid, I just feel like, how did I end up there? Was it maybe because my parents were not home and I was just playing outside? Was it maybe like the people that lived there were more predators and they were trying like, okay, let's bring these kids here? Would that have turned into something worse if I would have continued, right? Maybe having that friendship or visiting that house, right? I mean, could I have been maybe exploited sexually, things like that? So God, for sure, like he did something, and maybe it was a miracle. But all that to say, I feel like, who are these people who are adults who are doing it, right? So now trying to tie that back to the questions I mentioned before, if there's people who are maybe in our church leadership who are already addicted to these things, how can we even maybe like trust them, or if our own parents are maybe under this stronghold, are we doomed? What have you witnessed? Maybe some success stories that you have heard of. What would be maybe like a next step? Like, I don't know, like how do people even look for help in situations like that?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you sharing your story. That's, I forget the statistic, but it's something like 90% of exposures to pornography, either come from just stumbling upon it or by a friend or family member, someone who's close to you. Those are the people, you think about sexual abuse, people are like, oh, you don't want to walk down the street alone at night. It's like, okay, yeah, you want to be wise there. But honestly, the most dangerous spaces are often with family members. Millie, even your story illustrates that. Yeah. So I think it is one of the most sad things when church leaders are struggling with pornography, or when there's abuse of authority. What God gave them to use for flourishing is actually used to exploit people. And I just say to people, if you think that's happening, prayerfully, wisely, go to, other elders in the church and bring it up. Ask God to help you. If there's something that's going on, it needs to be addressed. I do think, though, in most churches, you can trust your leadership. There's always exceptions. But if you think about 1 Timothy 3, like the qualifications for elders, if a church is wisely electing pastors and elders, then you should be able to trust the guidance of your pastors. And I would hope that would be the case for most churches. But I also do think parents need to be really wise with who they leave their kids with. Overnight sleepover parties, when parents are gone, very dangerous. That is one of the most common places for pornography exposure. So, just parents, be wise about that. Even be wise with who you let babysit your kids or who you leave them with in the daytime. Be wise with which house you leave them at, because you might love the parents, but you're leaving them with unprotected devices. So there's just things like that as parents, I think we need to have a different lens on sometimes to view the world through, not with a spirit of fear, but a spirit of love for our kids. It's for love of our kids that we would run out to them in the ocean and pull them out of the sea. And it's for love of them that we should go, wade into the messiness of technology and sleepover parties and all these things to try to pull them back from the brink of dangerous situations. And so, yeah, I just tell people it starts with that, caring enough.
Wow. Caring enough. I love it. Okay, John Michael, I think that covers a lot. I think you have really helpful resources in this regard, to what would you call it? Fight pornography, overcome pornography addiction. And you already mentioned, where we can go, but can you repeat that? Is it Into the Light?
Yeah, intothelightministries.ca.
We
have 3 series that you can use. The Parenting and Pornography series to get equipped to talk to your kids, the Tech Safe series to help set up all your technology, and then the Into the Light documentary for people who are struggling with pornography to get hope in the gospel. So those are all free for you. That serves your listeners, and I think they're subtitles in Spanish as well.
Wow.
Yeah, I hope that everybody, take the courage to share this kind of stuff, because we don't know who really need it, right? I just want to say like this last thing. When I moved to this country, I ended up living with my cousin, and she and her recent husband, they were married just 3 months. And I remember I saw this huge box and was pornography. And there were...
magazines, you mean? Or
No, videotapes.
Oh, okay.
Like full. And I was like, what is this? And she was open. Oh, that's something my husband and we see when we want to get intimate. We need to see this to just get us motivated. And I was like, okay. And was normal for them and from everybody around them, their age. And now, this happened like 18 years ago. And I'm just now thinking, oh my gosh, I don't know where are they right now, right? They have a beautiful family, kids and everything. But I hear things like she was saying, like, now I have problems with myself because if I don't see that kind of stuff, I can enjoy my husband or things like that, right? I don't know where are they right now. But like I say, sometimes we don't know where the people are living. So I'm going to share this link with everybody around me because you never know who's really going to need it, you know. We feel like we're safe because we're Christians, but not really, right? The devil attacks us more, I think. But yeah, it's so important for us to share this material. Thank you so much for your heart. Thank you for being the light and the salt in this world. It's a huge thing.
Thank you, Millie. Well, I just want to say the gospel is what gives us hope as Christians. I think the devil does want to go out for us, but we have the greatest hope possible. Yes. And we know the creator of, the one who's made our sexuality and made marriage, and that changes everything. Yes. So that's what people hear walking away from this.
And we win already. We fight from victory. Yes.
Thank you so much, my friends, for listening, maybe watching, wherever you are. Maybe you're on christianpodcast.com. Maybe you are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. Would you share this episode with somebody that needs to hear it? Maybe even give us a positive review. That would be awesome. And visit us at christianpodcast.com. We'll see you guys on the next one.